Hello, and welcome to another edition of A Conversation With. Today we have a conversation with Mr. Udlock. And if you'd like to introduce yourself.
My name is Trent Udlock, and I am an English teacher here at Santa Maria High School.
So, how long have you been teaching for?
Overall, like about 20 years.
20 years, and you've only taught English throughout those 20 years, or?
No, I've taught pretty much every subject, actually. I used to teach in alternative ed in San Luis Obispo County and Court and Community School. I've spent many a day in juvenile hall teaching kids that are incarcerated as well. So I've been a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah, on the spectrum. What would you say was your most pleasant experience? Like stimulating for your mind? What do you feel like was pleasing to come to work every day and work with those students?
Those students or any students? Any students?
Any students at all.
Well, I got to think about that for a sec. I think my favorite thing about teaching is I don't know that there have been any wow moments where I felt like I enlightened a student to the point where I changed their life. I don't know that I've ever been aware that I've done that. But I enjoy the relationship part of knowing students and kids, and so I think my favorite part of teaching is that getting to know people. I think when you get a Facebook friend request from a student that you haven't seen in 10 or 15 years, that can be kind of cool, to look back and go, oh wow, apparently I'm still in that kid's head or that adult's head.
Yeah.
And so I like that. But as far as like the most pleasing educational part of my job, I really don't know the answer.
That's interesting. Do you feel school is important? Well, of course it's important for the education, but do you feel like the social aspects that also come with it are very important in the development of someone's, say, career?
The social part versus the career part, I don't know. I don't know that the construct of school is necessarily the best for students sometimes, to be honest. I sometimes feel if we wanted education as a society, if we wanted education to be effective, we would change the structure of our educational system. And an example would be that how can I possibly effectively educate students when I have 36 students in a class times 5 classes a day, and that equals 181 students or 176 students or some crazy number. How can that adds up to like 1 minute per kid per day? And so I don't necessarily feel like our system is set up to be super effective. I think the kids that are gonna do well come to us already doing well and are gonna leave us doing well. The kids in the middle benefit somewhat, but they get sometimes ignored because they are not the advanced kids and they're not the kids who are struggling, so they sometimes get left on their own. And then the struggling kids, I think we need a totally different system for them.
Do you think that different system is like Delta? Because I do hear a lot of very positive things about Delta.
Delta's having been in alt ed before, alternative, it's a super nurturing place, and so by connecting with them and having that smaller situation, you're able to draw more out of them. But I have a weird concept that like when kids are about 12 years old, we should just put them to work and they should just go out and work for when they're 12, 13, 14, 15, do hard labor, whether it's working in the fields or working on a construction site, and let them grow physically and mentally, and focus on growing physically and mentally, and then come back to education when they're a little bit older and a little bit more ready to accept the ideas of education.
Yeah, because we were just talking about it, but I feel like during those ages I was very spiteful, and I'm sure that a lot of kids have the same experience throughout middle school and kind of in the beginning of high school. Like, it's the youth versus the elders.
The youth versus the elders, and that's when kids stop liking to hear what they don't want to be told what to do. They start rebelling. Their brains, I mean, on a physiological level, a 13-year-old's brain is not ready to accept U.S. history or modern world history or life science because they're going through so much, and that physical, that mental, they're not ready for mental pursuits yet. So yeah, and it's not a very popular idea, obviously, to send kids out to hard labor. Hard
that's
labor.
Very interesting. I've never even considered that.
It's just there's an old phrase, I don't know who said it, but education is wasted on the youth. And after a person gets older, they're ready to learn. So.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we're so wrong.
But I don't think that's going to work. Nobody's going to do that.
Well, outside of teaching, what do you like to do? Are you passionate about like music per se, or is there anything that you in specific, Trent Udlock, like to do?
Well, I love music, as you know, I think, and I love surfing, and I like the ocean. I like sailing. I love the water. I love music. Yes.
Do you feel like it was nature or nurture that brought you to love the ocean?
I like to over-romanticize everything, but my grandparents, on both of my parents' side, are from Ireland and from Sicily, and both of those places are islands. And so I feel like I am naturally an island or water person. And with that being said, my dad was a super big water person, so we were around the water all the time.
Yeah.
So did he nurture that out of me, or was it natural?
Maybe it was both, just pushing you towards it. That was your destiny.
I think he was naturally that way, and I was naturally that way, and he nurtured it to be that way.
Are your kids more like attracted towards the ocean as well? Or do you
No.
feel like because you lived wherever you grew them up, it was obviously probably somewhere on the mainland, like not towards the ocean?
No, I tried to get them to surf when they were young, and they just never took to it. They love the water, but they're not crazy obsessed about it like I am.
That's interesting. Do you feel like they inherited a lot more of like their mother's traits?
Yeah, they're both afraid of the waves, just like my wife. But she loves the water also, but they do not like waves. So they are.
I
they
used
are
to be
who they
scared of
are.
them too. I remember.
You used to be
Yeah,
scared?
my grandpa would call me a wimp.
That's what I say to my daughters, but what are we going to do? I can't change who they are. I can't force it on them.
If you had to suggest to one of your students for a genre of music to listen to, what would you suggest?
Wow.
Or we could even narrow that down even to an artist. Who would you suggest that was someone that you think would like expand their mind? Like for me personally, I would say the Beatles. The Beatles were a huge revolution, and like, wow, things besides hip hop are good.
Yes. I would say that I would try to judge who the person was and which direction I could point them in, because I feel like I have a lot of experience with music, and see what it is they're ready for. Some kids like country music, and Nashville country music is terrible, but there is Americana music, which is country roots music, that is 10 times better than Nashville. So I could point them there, but the Beatles were a huge influence for me growing up. If I had to point somebody like you into a genre of music or into a band, I wouldn't say a genre, but I might be able to find bands like The Replacements, or what would be another good band? Like, I don't know if you know, like Jane's Addiction. Like I have a
that sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. So when I hear what a person's like, when I see a person who's into skating and stuff like that, then I would say, okay, The the Replacements might be something he'd be into. And Jane's Addiction is another great LA band from the late 80s, early 90s. So I could point you in that direction, and I'd have a student here who loves Pink Floyd. I'm like, oh, she loves Pink Floyd. Well, I could turn her onto the Grateful Dead, and she might enjoy the Grateful Dead. And so I have I would say a variety of loves in my music.
Was it you who had told me that you were roaming around with the Grateful Dead circus for a while?
Yeah, I was.
Was that like a crazy experience? Would you want to delve into that? We don't have to.
No, it's fine. I think the Grateful Dead came to me at a perfect time in my life. I was ready to shed my past and start fresh. And if you want to start fresh, the Grateful Dead was a great place to do it. And I don't know how many people are familiar with the Grateful Dead out there, but they're a 60s band, and they basically created a traveling circus where people would follow the band from city to city to city.
For like years, right?
Yes. I mean, they started in 65, and the lead singer died in 1995. So for 30 years they had,
wow.
And some people did it all the time as a job, and other people would just do it here and there. But my friends and I would do like the whole West Coast. We would go to shows in Arizona, then San Diego, then Los Angeles, then San Francisco, then Portland, and then Seattle. And so for like 3 weeks we'd be at shows nonstop, and you could sell sodas in the parking lot, and that would help pay for your tickets. People made burritos, grilled cheeses.
How much did a ticket cost at that time?
$25.
Oh.
Not too bad.
Yeah. Was it like a pool stage and like one big stage like they're above, or like was it seating, or
it would be different everywhere?
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
It would be different, and the Grateful Dead was cool because it was always general admission for the most part. So if you wanted to like scam your way up to the front, you could always do that. If you wanted to just hang back, you could. If you could do pretty much whatever you wanted. There was no rules with the Grateful Dead.
That's crazy.
It was really fun. I think I just asked my friend the other day about 80 shows.
Damn.
When I was in my early 20s.
That's a lot of shows. I've never been to one.
You've never been to one concert or one show?
One.
Like legit?
Or I've been to one like local show. We had a pop-up there, but I've never been to like an actual like, I'm going there to see blah blah blah.
This band?
Yeah. I
mean, I just did crazy. I don't know how I did it, but I just went to 10 shows in October.
Oh yeah, you were absent a lot.
So yes, I as I've told you guys, I always felt like I would get old and boring, and that hasn't happened yet. I just thought I'd wind up like my parents, and I haven't. My wife and I, she went to 8 shows I think in October. She didn't want to go to a couple of them, but we still go see music a lot. We still love to go do all that stuff a lot, and I don't know that I'll ever stop. So concerts in general, I have no idea how many concerts or shows I've been to. It's got to be a couple thousand.
Wow.
I don't really know.
That's a lot of experiences.
So if I had to encourage my students in music, I'd say just get out there and go to shows, because they're just not the same as listening to a record or a CD or Spotify or whatever.
Yeah, it's the music plus the performance, and that makes it.
It's all that, and the crowd, vibe, and the energy,
yeah.
and Grateful Dead shows they're one of a kind. You can't recreate a Grateful Dead show. I don't know that anything like that will ever. Well, there are other bands still out there like that, but the Grateful Dead was unique. But I don't know if you know about like bands like Phish.
I think I've heard of Phish. Yeah.
They have a full-on traveling circus of people that follow them. People are getting more into that. Like my current favorite band is Wilco, and
what song? List a few songs. I think I might know them.
California Stars is a really popular one, or not really popular. They're not very well known.
That name sounds.
Hummingbird is another popular one.
I feel like I say that about every band you name.
Wilco is like my wife and I love Wilco a lot, and I would say they're a combination of country, psychedelic rock, punk rock, and everything in between. And they're modern. I'm not into nostalgia. I'm not into like, oh, I love this band from the 70s. I'm going to go see them because they're at the Mid-State Fair. I can't stand that. Like, I always have friends my age. Let's go see the English Beat. I'm like, that was when we were in middle school or high school. Like, I don't need to go see those guys to play these songs again. You know, I like to see stuff that's fresh and current and
Always
real.
keep it changing. Do you feel like change in general is a good thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter like what the scenario is, do you feel like change will always happen for, not necessarily for the better, but for progression?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not willing to change, then I think that's when you grow old and get boring. You know, the people that want to go see those bands from 30 years ago are still listening to those bands in their car on the way home from work. Change, like, is the only, there's always the old saying, you can count on two things in life, death and taxes.
Yeah.
And I'll add change. Like, nothing stays the same. So yeah, change is rad. It's awesome, and you have to accept it and enjoy it.
Yeah, because some people really don't and fear change, and
They want to stay the same. They want to stay in their nice little comfortable zone, but that's not possible. So yes, embrace change, go for change, create change for yourself. Yes.
do you feel like these topics that we're discussing, like music, philosophy, like, do you feel like those are the more things that should be emphasized on in our education system? More so like understanding oneself and understanding the concept of change and it being good, understanding that maybe music is more than just sound, and then from that you can transfer that drawing is more than just lines, singing is more than just a tone of voice. It's from us, from the soul.
I think as a young person, the only real lens you have is looking at the world through your own perspectives. So yes, I like the idea of kids getting an understanding of self and where they fit into the greater community, and then where they fit into the larger community beyond that. Like, they need to understand themselves so they can understand where they fit, and then they can start to understand outside perspectives. And so, yeah, I would like to focus more on the arts, but science and math, no, I think they're all good. There's a lot of math that is very, very artistic.
Yeah, like,
and beautiful.
Definitely.
And science that is beautiful and interesting, and physics and chaos theory and things like that are beyond just the idea of photosynthesis or I don't know a lot of scientific stuff because I was never into science that much. But algebra is beautiful, and geometry is beautiful and artistic. And so I think there's art. I think those aspects of it are important for everybody, but it could be drawing, it could be writing, it could be playing music, it could be becoming the next Einstein.
But people just need to appreciate it as an art to fully be endowed by that information. Like, the more I would learn about algebra, I could maybe problem solve something that happened in my life.
Absolutely.
Because how in algebra you need to go through step by step by step by step. And maybe you could work that way into something in your life. Like, for example, learning to draw. First step, draw. Second step, get better, da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
The complexities you go through in algebra or in physics or chemistry are the same complexities you go through in philosophical thought or in writing a novel or any of those things. So yes, absolutely. I think that one of the problems to me is a lot of people look at education as a means to an end, meaning if I do all these things they tell me I'm supposed to do, I'm going to get a good job that makes a lot of money. And many of the best students in school aren't focused on learning, they're focused on getting an A. And they don't care what they learn along the way, as long as they get the A. Because the A is going to get them to the college that they want, and the college that they want is going to get them the career that they want. But there's no real focus put on learning just for the sake of learning.
Yeah, you're just putting that rat race that everything that you do now must have a desirable outcome.
It will create an outcome for you, exactly. Yeah. And the learning is not the important part. And we didn't get to that earlier. I dropped out of college after my first semester. Well, two semesters. As I told you earlier, sometimes I try to condense my timelines because I could tell my stories could be way too long. But I went to college for a semester, then moved to another college after that semester, and then dropped out after another semester of not doing anything, blah, blah, blah. Went to work for a while and was working in construction and concrete and doing stuff like that, and realized that wasn't what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted, but I was like, well, I'm going to put myself back into college. And I did it on my terms, not my parents' terms, not my school counselors telling me to go to college. And I was like, well, what do I want to major in? And so I said, well, no matter what I major in, they're going to make me read a lot of books. And so if I'm going to read a lot of books, I want to read cool books and books that I like. And what do I like? I like fiction. I like literature. So I became an English major with no goal in mind other than to read some cool books and to get educated.
And look where it led you.
And here I am now today. But I went back to college just for the sake of getting educated with no intention of making a lot of money or getting a big salary. So I think that's what kids, and I don't know, I can't blame a 16-year-old for not understanding that.
Yeah, because that's all they're taught and told.
That's what they're told. Go to college, get a good job. You'll go to college, you'll get a good. You go to college, gotta get good grades, gotta get good grades, Not you need to learn. You gotta get good grades. You gotta get good grades, and so, and that's just a fact. That's just what I've experienced over the last many years of teaching.
Yeah, that's a whole different big scenario that like is at the roots of education, the expectation of succeeding, but that success can't be defined when it comes to education because education is so vast and broad. There's so many things to be educated on.
Yes, and I wish that we had better programs in place to give those kids the options that they deserve and need.
So right now in English class we're reading a book called Into the Wild, which covers over Chris McCandless and how he's hitchhiked to Alaska and passed away. But one thing that was very shocking to, I'm sure, a lot of your students, I'm sure every single one of your students, is that you've lived through that same thing. You've hitchhiked to Alaska. Can you tell me about that? How'd that start?
It's not something I normally talk about in class because I don't like to I don't want to say draw that attention to myself, but I don't think most students will believe it when I say it. Like they say, like,
yeah, I kind of didn't at first.
He's just some
like, no way,
full of crap teacher that's telling me some stuff that's a lie. But I always wanted to travel when I was a kid, and I dreamed of going to Europe when I graduated from college. And sometime during college, like it all kind of happened at the same time. So I've mentioned that my parents split up when I was about 18, and it kind of blew my whole world out of the water. And all the things I grew up expecting to be true, family and loyalty to family and all that, like it just seemed like it just shattered everything. And so I was ready for new stuff, and I was ready to be me. And so around that time is when I started seeing the Grateful Dead, and doing a bit of traveling to see the Grateful Dead. And then one summer I had some money, and I knew I wasn't going to have money at the end of the summer no matter what I did. And so I convinced a buddy of mine to go on a cross-country trip.
Wow. And
so he and I had a car, I had like an old Chevy Blazer, and he had a Jeep. And he's like, well, which car are we taking? And we're like, well, it's summer, we're taking the Jeep, of course. And little did we know that everywhere besides California in the summertime, it rains nonstop.
Oh, wow.
And so we took off in this Jeep that only had a bikini top, and we got rained on pretty much every day for 35 days. But we went up to Oregon, not Washington, Idaho, Montana, all the way across country to Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., to New Orleans and back. And
Wow.
After that 5-week trip, I was just hooked. I was hooked. I was traveling. And so the next summer was coming around, and a friend of mine had a friend visiting town, and I was just geeked out, ready to travel. And they were from Alaska, and they had a photo album, and where they were like showing our friend, like back in the days when you had actual photos in a book, and they were showing like our friend and me where they lived, and it was so beautiful. And I was like, I'll see you guys this summer. And they kind of laughed, and I was like, no, I'm serious. And they still kind of laughed. And we went. And so my girlfriend and I took off to go to Alaska, and we had an old, like, 1967 VW bus. And when we got to Washington, the bus kind of was taking a dump on us. And
like a hippie van.
Like a hippie van, yes. And so I knew that bus was not going to make it to Alaska. And we were at a friend's house in Port Townsend, Washington. And she was like, well, let's just stay here for the summer. And I was like, no, I want to go to Alaska. And we went back and forth for a couple of days. And I'd read about hitchhiking a little bit, and I'd read books about hitchhiking. Like there's a book called On the Road by Jack Kerouac, which is a rad book. You should read it. And I was like, I gotta go. I gotta do this. So I just looked at her one day and I said, Robin, I'm hitchhiking to Alaska and I'm leaving in 2 days. And if you want to join me, join me.
Wow.
And if you don't, stay here in Port Townsend for the summer. That's fine. And so I gave her a couple of days to think about it. She decided to go. And so we went. And so our friend drove us we got to Bellingham, which is another place in Washington. And from there we took off hitchhiking. And honestly, it was very strange at first because I'd never done anything like that. And like we were talking about earlier, like you got to make the decision to stick your thumb out on the side of the road and get into a car with a complete stranger. And the first person that picked us up, was a librarian, like this sweet middle-aged librarian lady. And I was like, wow. And she only took us about 15, 20 miles probably. And then the next guy that picked us up gets out of his car and he's got a giant axe in his hand.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, all the fears it's all true. I'm dead. It's over. And he's like, oh, sorry about that. And he opens his trunk and he throws it in the trunk. He's like, I was in the front seat, so I needed to make room for you. So that guy took us a ways. And I think his name was Kerry. I still remember his name as Kerry. But he took us to his house that night and let my girlfriend and I sleep at his place. He woke us up in the morning. He was like, I got to go to work, but just lock up when you leave.
Wow.
And just let us have his place. Like, he was so trusting and nice and kind. And from that point forward, I was like, this is awesome. I can't believe this. Yeah. So we got ride after ride after ride after ride and wound up in a place called, I think, Dawson Creek it's called.
Oh, I think I've heard that name before.
And it sounds like, I think it's a TV show too.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But it's a place where, like, once you get there, it's a straight shot to Fairbanks, Alaska, but it takes like 5 days of driving.
Wow.
So we got picked up by this really religious couple that was moving to a military base in Fairbanks, and we rode they had a dog, 2 dogs, a little kid, rode in the back of their truck for 5 days to Fairbanks, Alaska.
Was it covered or?
No, it was open. It was freezing.
Wow.
It was snowing on us. It was raining on us. It was pretty brutal at times.
Yeah, for real.
But whatever. Like, those are the experiences that make it great. And so we got to Fairbanks, got dropped off. Like, and I'm not going to detail the whole trip, but it just was magic after magic after magic after magic. And so then we get dropped off in Fairbanks, and we're hitchhiking out of Fairbanks to go towards these people's house. And this guy pulls her. He's all, "Hey, you guys going to the festival?" And we're like, we are now.
Yeah, kind of else to do.
Next thing you know, we're at this bluegrass festival in was it Girdwood? No, it wasn't Girdwood. I don't remember what it was called anymore. Might have been Girdwood, whatever. And spent a couple of days listening to music, and then hitched our way down, and then wound up at that friend's house. Showed knock, knock, knock. Here we are.
They're all, wow, you're really here.
We were really here. So we stayed there a bit and went all over the place, and it was just amazing. It was just amazing. And so I went back to Alaska the next summer, and didn't hitchhike that time. Did I hitchhike? I didn't hitchhike at all. I actually drove, went a different way. It was fantastic. So I was just hooked on traveling, just hooked.
What do you feel like you took away from that experience?
I took away the fact that the world is a lot less scary than we're taught to believe it is. That like 99% of the people on this planet are super cool people and super nice people. And like I said, this was a very religious military couple that picked us up. That's not who I am, and they didn't care who I was. They were kind, and we were kind, and all these different people were so generous and kind, and that no matter, that's what the world is full of, and that I don't need to be afraid. I think that was the number one thing that I took away from it, that the world's not a scary place. So after that, I mean, I've hitchhiked all over. I hitchhiked all through Mexico since then, and I'd never have shared that story.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Oh, yeah, I've only shared that story with my Mexican-American lit class because, again, who would believe me that I hitchhiked through Mexico?
Was that, like, you just ran into only people who spoke, or I guess you speak a little bit of
I
Spanish.
speak
Yeah.
it. That's how I learned.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That's one of the ways I learned was
Improvise.
traveling in Mexico. But yeah, I was on a bus going back to an airport in Cancun, and the bus was crowded. I was actually in Belize, which is a different country, but the bus was crowded. It was hot. It was sweaty, and this very, very large woman, and we were stuck at a station waiting for a transfer to just join up with us. And this very large woman and her child sat right next to me on the bus, and it was like felt like it was like 190 degrees in there,
Wow.
and I was sweating and I was miserable, and I was like, I don't need to sit on this bus. So I got off the bus and just started hitchhiking.
Wow.
And I never went back to my airplane ticket in Cancun. I was like, no,
Make it home by myself.
I'll make it home by myself. And so it took 6 weeks to get from Belize to Lake Tahoe.
Wow.
And that was like, and I met so many people in Mexico that were so nice. Honestly, like people taking me to their houses, just like the people in Alaska and Canada. A traveling pizza salesman, he and his buddy like put me up in their hotel for the night, took me out to dinner. People taking me to their ranches, like and drinking, what is it, Nescafe, like that's what everybody drinks in Mexico, and or at least they did back then. And like getting milk from the cow to go in the Nescafe, like in this terrible coffee, but fresh milk from the cow in their backyard.
That's
So-
such a genuine experience. That's
Yeah.
like more than any other vacation you
Oh,
could
it
ever
was
get.
unbelievable. So then crossed into Texas, and Texas was.
Did you like pass through the border like with your passport and stuff? Like you
I
had all-
did.
okay.
Yes, I did. Crossing the border guard was like, "Who are you, and what are you doing here? You're from California. You don't have a car." I'm like, "Well, I've been hitchhiking." So he was kind of shocked to see me.
Wow.
And then in Texas, like, whew, don't go to Texas, anybody. I have a thing against Texas sometimes. They're a little conservative for me, but that was the only place I've had a hard time hitchhiking was in Texas, and they called the police on me, and the police were not chasing me, but everywhere I went, somebody was calling the police on me for being a vagrant.
That's
And-
interesting.
And so I have a grudge against Texas for that still to this day. But that's where the story comes, where I got the job at the construction company working for that guy in New Mexico, like that. So that was that whole trip of hitchhiking.
Was it hot
Um,
in Texas, New Mexico?
it got colder. This guy in Texas actually, it was weird. It was May and it got cold. This guy stopped by his house and then took me back to the freeway. He got me a spare sleeping bag. Because I didn't even have a sleeping bag. All I had was a blanket.
Oh wow.
So he hooked me up with a sleeping bag, and then I was at least slightly warm. Then as I got through New Mexico and north into Colorado, it got cold, like it was snowing again.
Oh,
so,
wow.
so dealing with that, hitchhiking in the snow is not fun.
I bet.
But eventually you find a place. Somebody will always take you in. The world's not scary. There's a lot of nice people out there. So I never recommend hitchhiking to anybody. I'm not supposed to, but
Can't say it wasn't a good experience.
it was fantastic. On the cautionary tale of hitchhiking, so there has to be one. I would say I was sexually harassed a few times.
I remember you mentioning this in the class.
And that happens. It isn't always the 1% of people that aren't kind. It is a bit scary, and I wasn't sexually assaulted, but I was for sure harassed and put into very uncomfortable positions. And I walked away from that understanding how a lot of young ladies and women feel in this world, and men get sexually harassed as well. But there were some scary moments for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So don't go out hitchhiking.
Start slow. Yeah, I don't know who watches this.
Yeah, I don't
but,
either. So
but,
we'll see.
but
We'll
for the
see.
most
I
part-
feel like with you on it will open up to a whole new audience.
Well, thanks. I think.
A lot of people know you. A lot of people talk highly of you
Well, thanks. I'm glad
and
to hear that.
will describe you as chill. That is one of the most popular words I've been heard you
Well,
described as.
I will accept that. I don't think I'm the most stressful teacher on this campus. That's for sure. At least I try not to be.
So to wrap up, is there any piece of advice that you'd want to give to anyone? Like anything that you just want to say out loud?
I mean, my biggest concern for students at this school is that many of them are going to stay right here in Santa Maria and not go out and experience the beautiful, big, wide world we have out there. And so I always encourage people to get out there, put themselves out there, take chances, take risks, escape your hometown for a good 10 years of your life if you can. And if you feel like coming back after 10 years, come back after 10 years or 5 years or 15 years, but get out there and experience the world, because it's beautiful out there.
You heard him. The world is beautiful. Love thy neighbor. Love everybody. We appreciate y'all watching. I appreciate you.
Hey, my pleasure.
Coming
Thanks for having me. I feel honored. It's my very first interview of my life, I think.
That's surprising. You're a very interesting person. I feel like I could ask you even more and more and more.
You can ask me. Well, are we still? You can ask me anything you want, anytime you want to.
For sure. I'm sure this won't even be the last time you're interviewed. Who knows? But we appreciate everyone watching. That's all the time we got for today. Love everybody. Go talk to someone. Go experience another perspective. Go explore your city. Whatever it is, just have some change in your life. It'll never be bad. Or maybe it will, but who knows? Until next time. Croaked. That was good.
Very good. Cheers.
That was awesome. Yeah.
Thank you for being a part of it. My pleasure. Thanks.